Hello, hello. Thank you again for joining me on another episode of What Sayeth the Crooked Nose. Today, I'm really excited. I get to talk to another elite mentorship trainer as part of Peter Sage's training. I myself am a graduate of the Elite Mentorship Forum. I have not gone through the training curriculum or protocol. And so I love to hear how other people take what they've learned in the highest levels of consciousness, physics, metaphysics, psychology, neuroscience, and with what, with where they come from, especially people from other cultures, and then how they, amalgamate that together to create the best narrative that serves them as a trainer, best narrative that serves their students, right, that they're training, or even the students if they are act as a community manager. And really, I'm really interested to hear ultimately how she has taken this training and made her life better and made the lives of those around her better, and what she's learned along the way. Because for me, when I talk to people, I mean, I process things in real time. So sometimes a thought will come to me and I'll just try it out with somebody and it's like, hey, well, that kind of makes sense to me. And I suspect that I'm not the only one who's like that. And I'm really encouraged by just how, the warm reception that I've got on these podcasts, not just from people watching, but also people who are willing to come on. I love that people just love to share the love, and that they're looking to help make the world a little bit better place, right? One podcast at a time, right? So thanks again for joining me, and I think you're in for a real treat. All righty, Christene, thank you so much for joining me. It's a pleasure to have you, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation and really see where it goes. Can you maybe start us off a little bit about, a little bit about you, and what really got you interested in this exploration that Peter takes us through?
Well, actually, I'm English and I live in New Zealand, and I have always I'm been in natural health and natural healing for 28 years now. So I've always loved that sort of work. And I've been passionate about personal development for a long time. And what led me into Peter's work was, to be honest, initially I was bored during lockdown.
Nice.
And surfing the internet and came across the 5-day challenge, your peer group, which was sort of like the thing that really hooked me in, because your people that you connect with is so important. And then, of course, I went on to USM and then EMF and then EMT. So I have loved the journey, and it's all about personal development, getting to know yourself. And when you work with clients in the natural health field, actually understanding yourself helps you understand them and why they may be manifesting illness or sickness within their body.
I like that. I like that a lot. I wholly agree. Right, the more I know myself, right, the more wisdom I have. And because if we're all the same, right, well, you're going to have different emotions and different interactions and different memories that are guiding and informing your life. But ultimately, right, we all come from the same source. And for me to know how to connect to that, well, then now, if that's what people are looking for, well, just like a forest guide, I've walked that path. And now I can help others walk that as well, and so that they can reach that destination.
Yeah. And I think it is the thing of people are seeking guidance now. They're looking for somebody to show them the way. And raising the whole thing about Peter that attracted me as well was about raising the consciousness of the world, because we so need to do that.
Yeah.
And the more of us out there singing the same song.
Well, and it would be nice to see, right, there's this idea in the Tao Te Ching that I really love, that's, if you give evil nothing to resist, it'll go away on its own. Not because it isn't there, but because you can step out of its way. And really, I think a lot of the political turmoil that we've got, a lot of the corruption that we've got, if people's level of consciousness raised, well, we'd no longer accept it in the way that we do. And we'd find a way to be able to step out of its way by just creating whether it be a new technology, whether it be creating a new political system, whatever it is, that people would amass around it because it would just make sense, and it would simply invalidate that which doesn't work anymore. And just like everything else that doesn't work anymore, it is now a relic of the past.
Yeah, and that's saying what you resist persists.
Yep.
So the more that we're resisting all this turmoil and this political agenda, then the more it's going to keep coming back.
Well, so, and in our personal lives as well. I mean, I nearly ruined my life by being a huge, staunch political activist. I mean, I was out there hundreds of times on the streets here in Utah. Here I am. Look how smart I am. And not only am I smart, but my ideas are better. You know how I know my ideas are better? Because I can yell louder. So now let me yell a little bit louder just so I can prove it. And I had my head so far up my ass for a while, but but coming out of that. Right. Peter helped me as I found other spiritual leaders that led me to him. And then he led me to even other spiritual leaders, which is fascinating. And so I take it you cured your boredom.
Yes, I did.
And then did you sequentially go from the 5-day challenge and then you did the whole year of USM? Or
no, I didn't. I haven't actually, to be honest, I haven't completed USM.
Yeah, I was going really well with it as I was going through. And so for those who might be watching this who don't know what USM is, it's ultimate self-mastery. It's incredible. It's about give or take about an hour a week, and there'll be some bonus stuff thrown in there.
Yeah.
And it's for 52 weeks for a year to be able to transform your life. Then there's more in depth, which is the Elite Mentorship Forum, which I've gone through, which Christene has gone through. And then on top of that, you can become a trainer, which has even more levels of dimensions, even more training. Yeah. And so at what point did you realize that you wanted to be a trainer?
I realized that I wanted to be a trainer because I'd been developing the idea of my own program already. So for 2 years, I'd been working on something for myself and then put it to one side because I didn't know how to pull everything together. And I loved the EMF program. It contained everything that I was thinking, the spiritual aspect, the practical aspects, looking at all different levels of our mindset. It wasn't just about spirituality. It was actually, how do you practically put this into action? And looking at your beliefs, your values, your, emotions, your relationships, everything was sort of in that one package, all on a platform. So why not?
Oh, I love that. And you're absolutely right. That's something that I found very fascinating is that, as much as I really like Sadhguru, big fan of Sadhguru, I've been following him for a while. And in fact, I'm pretty sure that Sadhguru is who led me to Peter, because I wouldn't have been as receptive to Peter had I not been receptive to Sad, because listen to him, like Peter says much the same thing. But Sadhguru said this thing that, if you're not happy, well, that's your choice, right? You can just choose to be happy. And it's like, okay, yeah, it's easy for an Indian mystic to go ahead and say that. And I feel like Peter in some ways said the same thing, not in those words, but he said, and this is how you can do that. You can start by examining this. All right, what comes up? All right, write about it. All right, start documenting it. Okay, now how do you feel? Okay, well, why is it important for you to get past that? It's like, oh, wow, interesting. And I love the roadmap that he created for me to follow, and then allow me to go off on side trails if I want. And then figure out, not like, hey, that wasn't what you were supposed to do, but on the side trails, hey, what did you learn?
Yeah. And the fact of also keeping your journal of positive confirmation, so it's raising your consciousness to when things are working out, which we don't tend to do as generally. We'll go, oh, this didn't work out. We get a journal of unpositive, of negative confirmation.
Yeah.
That we tend to keep. And so when you are asked to keep that journal of positive confirmation, then you see where the universe is stepping in. You see how you're being looked after. And the one thing that was so good for me was I live in a friendly universe. That became my amalgam, you know, all the time. I live in a friendly universe, and sort of people going, how are you living when you're not down or things? This is because I live in a friendly universe. And it was so good to say.
Yeah, I like that a lot, right? That idea that Einstein came up with, that the most important thing to, a person can ask themselves in their life is whether or not they live in a friendly universe. And what I like about that is I used to play with this idea of fair. It's like, do we really want life to be fair? Because that means everything that's bad happens to you is because you deserved it, because it's fair. But if I live in a friendly universe, everything that I perceived as bad was just simply because, I just need to lift a few muscles at the gym and get stronger. And I needed to learn a lesson in order to get me to where I needed to go, right? If I need to go across a path and there's a raging river and I don't know how to swim, well, at some points, something is going to force me into a pool and I might panic and I might think, oh my God, what a terrible day this is, but I'm learning how to swim. And when I learn how to swim, well, I might actually survive when I go across that river.
And that's the other thing I really embraced, was that nothing happens to you that isn't going to be towards your benefit. So everything, like you're saying, that you perceive to be negative is going to end up as a positive long term. And that also making mistakes is okay. I get my greatest learning from my mistakes.
What's interesting there is that, right, if we're perfect where we are, is it even a mistake?
No.
Right, because it's there to inform us of where we are at that stage in life. Oh, okay, this is where I am. Oh, well, I want to be better. Okay, well then do something better. Perfect. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I always think as well, the post-it, those sticky post-it notes was supposedly a mistake, but look how, it's now worldwide and people use them worldwide.
Yeah.
Because the glue was meant to be permanent on them, not this.
That's funny.
Glue that comes off.
And then even just having curiosity, right? Velcro was created because a guy had a burr was stuck to his dog's fur. He's like, well, what the? And he just took it off and put it under a microscope and started looking at it. It's like, oh, and then he created Velcro because of his curiosity for something they could have said, oh, stupid burr. Oh, why do these things? Why does this have to happen all the time? You dumb dog, quit running in the weeds, right? Instead, he showed a little bit of intellectual curiosity. Hey, why is that stuck so white? I mean, that thing is stuck in there. What makes this so stuck? And from there, he created one of the most interesting inventions around.
Yeah, I know. And that is the thing. It's being curious. It's opening up your curiosity. And that's the other thing with Peter. It's saying, ask better questions. And so instead of, oh, this always happens to me, why, oh, this is interesting. What am I learning from this?
Oh, yeah.
That you're twisting the whole thing round. And that's the thing I learned going through EMF, and also taking people through EMF. And I'm doing a cohort at the moment with Sue Parrott, and we're coming on to module 12, and I'm going, oh, it's going to be over soon. Yeah. And it's like, it's so lovely seeing people grow and just embrace new life and new understanding themselves. And through their learning, I'm learning.
Well, that's what's so interesting is that, right, as we're going through any sort of stage in our life, we're then a reflection of what we are ready to perceive at that moment and what those around us are helping us to perceive. And then when we're helping others, well, then that same thing, but we have a deeper level of perception. And then we see that glimmer of like, oh, and then it taps into that same feeling that we had when that same thing happened to us. And it deepens our appreciation for, one, what we've learned, and two, how far we've come. And I feel like when we do that, our roots grow even deeper.
And also you get, you're saying a deeper perception of the course, because sometimes you go through the course the first time and you may be doing it intellectually, but not in that deep spiritual heart sense. And the more you go over the material, you get little nuances and things that you might not have picked up the first time that you go through it. So there's so much in it that I love, and it resonates with me. And I love the map of consciousness. I've got it right here by my desk.
Is that the one that David Hawkins created?
Yes.
Nice. Yeah, I'm a big fan of that. I like that. That's the 17 levels. I like how Peter doesn't feel the need to recreate the wheel, which also gives me permission to not recreate the wheel. If there's a tool that's very useful, well, then use the useful tool and then just talk around it and add that to your lexicon or add that into your ability to teach others. And his recommendations for book reading have been very fascinating as well.
Yeah. And the movies as well.
Yeah.
Books and the movies, there's so much information that you can go through, and I haven't read all the books yet, and I haven't managed to watch all the movies because I couldn't get them here in New Zealand.
Really?
Movies, so but I've watched most of the movies.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, and so you are going to be wrapping up your cohort pretty soon, right? You've got, I know, right? You've got module 13 after 12, and then 14 they'll go through themselves, which is kind of a fake module, but a fun module.
Yeah.
And so then what's next for you? Or do you just kind of sit back and just, you know?
Well, I'm planning to do another cohort later this year.
Nice.
That's my goal. And there's a group of us ladies in the Australasian area. We're planning a higher consciousness gathering down in New Zealand that we're looking forward to inviting people to. We've just got to finalize some dates. Then we'll be putting it out there to invite people down to New Zealand, which will be fun.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things. I'm also launching a masterclass next week on grow as an aromatherapist, because you can learn your aromatherapy, you're in that field, but how do you grow as an individual, as a business person, with being an aromatherapist? So I'm working in that field as grow as an aromatherapist. So I've got a masterclass next week that I'm doing.
That's fantastic. And how long does that masterclass last?
It's going to last an hour.
Okay.
And then I'm going to be sending people an ebook and a recording and a list of essential oils that are beneficial for the different. I'm going to be talking about 4 elements.
That's cool. So, I know my spiritual master, Ed Stracher, who taught me how to be a healer. He's a big fan of aromatherapy. In fact, I believe rose, I want to say rose is his favorite. Yeah. Powerful. I mean, there's, part of why I named my podcast What Sayeth the Crooked Nose. One, it's a pun, right? Because Cameron is right, it means crooked nose. And so it comes from Scotland. And but 2, right, we can walk into a room and everything seems foreign. Everything looks foreign. Maybe we don't recognize anyone. We don't recognize what's going on, but then we smell something familiar and it takes us right back. Like, oh, I know this. I know this. And so the nose knows.
Yeah. I actually did a talk for the Aroma Summit by Aroma Trust on aromas invoke memories. So I did a talk for them on that. Which
I think Disney would agree with you with Ratatouille, if you've ever seen that movie.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's true, right? It taps us deep into, to the memory and the emotion. Like it fully immerses us into not just the thought, like, oh, that was a nice thing that happened, but like we're reliving the experience.
Yes. And I was actually relating this talk to I was hypothesizing the idea that if you've got people who are in early Alzheimer's or early dementia, if you start to use essential oils in the early stages, relating them to a particular person or a particular event, and you only use that particular aroma for that person or event, and then when the dementia or Alzheimer's becomes full blown, I'm sort of wondering if you say, Cameron, you're rose or essential oil. So every time you went to see that person, you always had rose. Then would they remember you? Would they connect that memory with you because you're the rose oil person?
That's interesting. Yeah, that would be interesting to see. I haven't had the opportunity to heal anyone with dementia. I have had the opportunity to heal people with mental disorders though. And so I'm really looking forward to see, because part of being a healer, it's like I don't get to know the minutia to the rules of how they work. I understand that I help people tap into the deepest levels of who they are. I understand that the soul is the ultimate expression of strength and truth, and that our body is a reflection of that. And so if the soul is being drained, our body and our minds, well, they break down as a natural consequence. So as Ed taught me, as I can help people restore their soul, well, then their mind and their body heal as a natural consequence. What I don't know is, like, where does that break down? Like, it could it come to a point where, say somebody had to, excise one of their livers, or one of their kidneys. Would I be able to come to a point to regrow? Well, I don't know. It sounds weird. It sounds bizarre to even just hear that coming out of my mouth. But
I
then
know.
it's also bizarre to be able to heal somebody and like heal their arthritis, or a lady who I'm helping right now with impacted vertebrae, and pain's gone in less than a week. Well, wow. You've been dealing with this for years? Wow. Well, that's interesting. Okay. Well,
I had a lady who had a fibroid the size of a grapefruit, and she was basically told that she would have to have a hysterectomy. And she came to me and sort of asked, well, could I do anything? And I said, oh, I don't know, but let's give it a go. So I went through a sequence of treatments, and then she went back to the specialist, and they says, oh, maybe we measured it wrong, because it's now the size of a golf ball. And so she says, oh, I'm coming back. We'll do another sequence of treatments. And we did that. And then she went back, and they were going, don't know what's happened here. It's completely gone.
That's awesome.
And so she didn't have to have the hysterectomy. And we worked together on it. But she was also willing to work on herself.
Yep.
And that was it. Because I had another lady, which was so interesting. She was the one who healed herself was a lawyer. The one who also came with the same condition was a yoga instructor, and I explained the same thing. She chose the operation. The lawyer chose to go through the whole dealing deeply. And I found that fascinating.
Yeah. I wonder, and, I don't want to, cast judgments on people, but I wonder if the yoga instructor was like, well, I'm so much more advanced, otherwise I wouldn't be in yoga. So I wonder if ego got in the way. And they said, well, it must have to be. Whereas the lawyer, was like, hey, I understand my lane very well. I'm a lawyer. I practice law, but I also know there's a lot of things I don't understand. And hey, you know what? Let's give it a try and see. She went just like a lawyer did, went and got empirical data. The doctor's like, whoa, what the hell? This thing is like less than half. And she's like, whoa, data confirmed, right?
Yeah. So that was a great, experience to go through. And like you say, when you're working with someone and they come to you and they say, oh, I've been here, and you go, well, I'll see what I can do. Because I don't say I can, I will work with them. And if they're willing to work on themselves, that's the important thing. Because if they're not willing to work on themselves, no matter how much you work on them, it'll rebound, and they will possibly return to what they were at. You can,
that's a really interesting point.
Yeah. They go away feeling a lot better, but they have to change their thinking, they change their peer group, even the surroundings. Otherwise, it will bring things back into alignment to where they were before.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if I drive drunk and then I drive into a ditch, and then I come to you to help me, well, if I don't change my behavior and I drive drunk again, well, guess what? I'm likely going to drive myself into a ditch again. Yeah. And so what I usually do, and it's interesting to hear you say that, is I first I tune in, like, if I'm talking to them, find out what their issues are, find out if they're interested, if they're in a place where they can, where they're looking to invest in themselves. Well, then I tune in, I ask, hey, one, do I have permission? And two, if I've never healed it before, I ask, hey, do I have the ability to heal this? Yes, I do. Sweet. So then I tell them, well, look, I can heal you, however, or I can help you, however, this is something that's going to work on self-belief, right? Your body is your body. You have sovereign control over your self-will. And do you think your body listens to you or listens to me? And they're like, listens to me, or listens to them, right? And it's like, yes, exactly. So if you don't believe, well, then what do you think that's going to do? Oh, okay. And so I usually guide them through that. And I found that it has helped. And the way that I've tried to look at it is the woman who touched the robes of Jesus and then was healed. And he turned around and said,
Yeah.
by your faith, you're healed.
Yeah.
Because if I can give them that certainty, but then let them know, hey, it's up to you, right? Physical trainer absolutely can whip your butt into shape. But if you refuse to go to the gym, well, ain't nothing going to happen. Or if you go to the gym and then you fold your arms, well, then he can't help. But that doesn't limit his power. It doesn't limit his knowledge. It doesn't limit, what that physical trainer is able to do. It just means that you're unwilling.
Yeah, so true. And that is the point, that they have to do the work, the internal work themselves to create the change. And I love that story about, the lady, touching Jesus's robe, because that was all about faith.
Yeah. Yeah, and she
There
just
is
knew, no matter what, nothing is going to keep me from touching his robe. Nothing. And she made it happen. Yeah. And I like that. It's rare, I think, to find people like that. Now, we certainly are in a community where we see a lot of people doing that, which is wonderful. It's great, which I now understand the 5-day challenge of changing your peer group, changing your environment, because your willpower is, coming back to that personal trainer, is a muscle. And eventually that muscle will get fatigued. But if my environment is constantly uplifting me and constantly supporting me, well, then when I get fatigued, I can lean against something that's supporting me. And then I'm supported, and I don't have to flop on the ground like with no muscle strength. And
Yeah.
yeah. And so what have you found has been your most rewarding part of being a trainer?
Wow. Seeing others grow and excel. And seeing the growth in Kathy, like you said, from when she started EMF 16 and to when she's finished it, and Michelle and Scott and all of these people, sort of how they grew, and they're going out there and spreading the word and excelling. And that, seeing people excel that you've helped through the process, is wonderful.
And then Kathy, I think we were talking about her offline. So if anyone's confused, Kathy Singer, who happens to be somebody not just in our community, our elite mentorship community, but I also trained with Ed. And being with her, and I'm sure she saw much the same with me, went from like to really wielding this power and really coming into her own. And she much more confident. And that's got to be a beautiful thing to realize that, I really helped this person go from a place of scarcity to go from a place of just really a fulfilling sense of certainty within.
I mean, I love seeing people grow. I've always have, in different careers. I was pre-children, many, many moons ago, a training officer for companies in the UK, and that was to helping people learn skills. And I loved that, so personal development, seeing people grow, has been a passion of mine for a long time. And then after children, I moved into natural health.
And so as a healer or as a trainer, is there one that gives you more sense of fulfillment?
Training. I love training. I do, because actually, even though I've done massage, aromatherapy, Bach flower remedies, pranic healing, herbal courses, etc., different modalities, I've usually ended up training people in those skills as well.
Ah, interesting.
So I've taught massage, I've taught aromatherapy, and I've done a bit of teaching of hands-on healing and things like that. So yes, training, I think, has been something I've been drawn towards a lot in
So
my
that's
career.
interesting. Hands-on healing. It's interesting that you mentioned that. I recently found out that my great grandmother apparently was a hands-on healer. Like, well, that's strange. There was a ghost story of when I was 12. I was watching TV in the living room, and my mom's old kitchen phone that had this extra long cord, and I heard it snapping against the counter, which is exactly what my cat does because he rubs up against the counter, and I was like, oh sweet, there's my cat. I can go grab him and nuzzle with him, but my cat wasn't there, and the cord was moving. Like, that's weird. He must have, like, where'd he go? And then I watched the cord snap again in front of my eyes, like, what the F? And so what's weird about this, well, I guess what makes sense about this and why I was open to it was, my grandfather, I grew up with ghost stories of like demons in caves, breathing fire, scaring the dog crap out of people, like, chandeliers shaking, when people are like holding seances. And so here I'm a little like 6-year-old, 7-year-old kid listening to this and like nearly peeing my pants.
Yeah.
And so I see this and like, it's a little silly to think that just a phone cord moving on its own would terrify me, but it terrified me. Oh, I bolted out the door, like, yeah, I was all crying, and then I came back in, and out of the corner of my left eye, I see like this dust silhouette, maybe 5 foot tall, and then I look at it, and then it disappears, and the phone cord starts snapping again. I was like, and then so I was brave enough to grab the phone, call my grandpa, and then stretch it all the way out to like 20 feet away from where it was, so I could feel a sense of safety. And talking to him, it's kind of describing what was going on. I don't know why he intuited it, but he said, "Hey, that's probably your grandmother Nan." And recently I've been doing a big deep dive in physics and with and without Peter Sage, and just the idea that in physics and in mysticism, time is not real. Time is a figment of our imagination, and if time happens all at once, right, well, then there is something to be said that the collective unconscious would be able to inform Nan, right? This, that I'm a healer. It makes sense that she would reach out to such a way that I'd now have evidence somewhere in my past of somebody visiting me. So when I start stepping into this path, I can look back and be like, oh my God, I wasn't ready for it yet. And so, which is why I really closed myself off, like, the hell with this, scared the hell out of me, right? But now I can look back and I can almost see the grand design. It's like, oh yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah. And I mean, I've had instances where keys have just gone, and I know I put them in a certain place, and then they've just been moved. And I'm going, come on, will you stop playing games? Can you tell me where the keys are, please? I used to get freaked out about it and sort of like think it was me going crazy, but then I've realized, no, it's not. They're just sort of like way of communicating, sort of like saying that they're around, so they move things.
Well, and what humans have access to like 1% of the visual spectrum, and so the idea that there's stuff out there that we can't see just makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I think, aren't we ignorant if we think that there isn't?
Yeah.
Why should we be the only ones around? I think that's very arrogant to think that way. That's my feelings. I mean, there's so much that is unexplored and unexplained, that we have to be open-minded. And I think, what's the saying that Peter's got? Open-minded and not inquisitive is naive.
Mm.
And not open-minded and not inquisitive is dogmatic.
Yeah.
So we need to be open-minded and inquisitive.
That makes sense. I like that. I like that a lot. And it's fun to repackage some of the wisdom that he has, helped share with me. And what's even more fun too is that, I'm a big fan of the Tao Te Ching. And so I'll start to pick out things, like the quote I mentioned earlier about, if you give evil nothing to resist, you'll go on its own. Well, our mentor, Peter, talks about how, that which you resist persists, right? Something that you mentioned earlier. Well,
Yeah.
because you are, you're simply giving it, more energy. It's like, oh, so he's actually taken a lot of this deep wisdom and made it his own. And I love that so much, because then, because part of the Tao, right, the way it's written, the Tao Te Ching, the way it's written is like, hey, if you think that you're going to read it, be super confused, which is exactly what a Zen master is supposed to do. It's supposed to confuse those who think that they know so they can actually learn.
Yeah. And I think what you've hit on there is Peter is very good at pulling, he has used Joe Dispenzas and David Hawkins and all these different people, their information, and pulled it into one course together. And like you're saying, the Tao Te Ching and others, I mean, I remember hearing about the 6 human needs. God, about 10 years ago or more. Chloe Medanis and Tony Robbins put from what my understanding, they put the 6 human needs together and talked about them. And so when I heard all that again, I thought, oh yeah, I understand that, know that. But it's the 6 human needs is so good when you really understand it. The certainty, variety, significance, love and connection, growth and contribution. All of those aspects, we all look to those needs and want to meet those needs one way or another. And when you understand that, and then you see gangs and people, you think, yeah, your needs are being met to a high level. That's why you're not going to come out of the gang. Right. So how can we meet those needs in a positive way so that you're not meeting them in the negative ways?
Well, that's such a good point, because it's so easy for people to sit back and be like, well, look at these guys are getting beat up in a gang. Like, they get jumped in, they get the crap kicked out of them to join. Like, why would they do that? Well, they probably get the crap kicked out of them at home. They probably not just get the crap kicked out of them at home, but they probably have nobody who even shows them like a loving hand. They just beat the crap out of them, tell them how stupid they are. And, get over here, you son of a bitch, or whatever. And then at least when they're part of the gang, well, guess what? You do something good. That's my dog. That's my dog right there.
Yeah.
Right? And then, so they're getting that love. They're getting that sense of significance. And then it all makes sense. Like, oh,
they get variety.
That's true. Absolutely.
And they get certainty.
Yep.
And then they get the growth because they can move up in the ranks.
Then they get uncertainty, because if they're going to go, commit a crime, they don't know who's going to show up. They don't know if they're going to get chased. Yeah, that's fascinating. And when we quit judging people for the actions that we perceive are bad, and instead try to ask ourselves, right, like you mentioned before, ask better questions. Hey, why would they do that? What would cause somebody, right? What would have to happen in somebody's life for them to be this way? And you show that level of inquisitiveness, you might realize, like, oh, I could easily be that person. And when you do that, there's a subtle change that occurs. And it's almost a guard. It's almost a guard around the heart that kind of just drops. And I realized in dark night of my soul that led me to creating my highest ideal of goodness, which I can conceive, which was recommended by Jordan Peterson. Well, then doing that then eventually led me to Sadhguru. Sadhguru led me to Peter Sage, and then finding an amazing spiritual adventure over at Devil's Tower in Wyoming. And then that led me to Ed Stracher. And then now I'm being led to, I'm creating my own business. And it's fascinating. It's fascinating to see how that awareness and that ability to show that curiosity and be like, well, not only could I be the negative, but when I saw Peter, he was using quotes I've used for years. He was using analogies I've used for years. And I got the distinct impression that I came back in time and said, hey man, you could be this one day. Now, granted, when I become that, that means Peter's going to be, whatever that is plus what he is now, right? But still, that doesn't matter. I don't need to be Peter Sage.
No,
I could
you.
have the accomplishments, right? The accomplishments and the ability to help others in much the same way that he helps. They heal others in much the same way that he heals, because, like it or not, as a trainer, there's certainly a level of healing that comes from that training. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. And, we're all on this journey, and we're all going to help whoever we need to help. And they will be put in our pathway for us to help, or others will come into our pathway for us to learn from them. And I think that's the great thing, is trusting. I think that's the other thing. My trust has grown through going through this process, and the people I've met. I've met some absolutely beautiful people in my journey through EMF, and they're going to be lifelong friends, and they pick you up, don't they?
Yeah. And when you say your trust has increased, do you mean for yourself or for others or for both?
Both. Actually trusting that this is for my highest good. Trusting that I will make it through. Trusting that things are going to always turn out right. That trust has just sort of grown. I mean, last year I went to Tenerife, yay, and also went on the cruise. And it was funny, I was booking my flight here from New Zealand, and people were saying, are you sure you're going to be able to fly? Because there were certain rules when you could fly or you couldn't fly into certain countries. And I said, no, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. And then I think it was just about a week before all those restrictions were lifted. So I was able to fly. And it was sort of like that whole trust that, yes, this will work out. That's what I mean. That whole level of trust is sort of like, I'm not worried the same, so, okay. And like that other saying, there'll be this or something better.
Yeah. 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 I've liked that a lot. That idea of this or something better means that, hey, maybe I haven't quite learned how to swim yet in order to cross this river. And it may feel like failure at first that I can't just go across the river, but not crossing a river, or trying to cross a river and then dying, is going to be a much bigger failure than a slight setback. And to learn the skills that I need, or learn the lessons that I need in order to be able to cross that river and then get to the other side.
And the other thing is that through Peter, I've got to know Rory Kilmartin.
Oh, nice.
And gone through the study group with Rory Kilmartin and the coaching program with Rory Kilmartin. And now I'm helping facilitate with him on the coaching program. So training keeps coming up for me.
That's awesome. Yeah. So there's a couple of people in my EMF group. And so we, just like, as recommended, we're going through it a second time. So, they seem to really love it. I think they're on their 5th week. I don't know how long it is, but, for those who don't know who Rory Kilmartin is, he's got some of the most amazing different videos on YouTube about different archetypes and this energy. So if you're interested in Jungian psychology, you're interested in what those archetypes are that are common between every single person. Seems incredible. I haven't gone through the training, but from what I've seen, I'm pretty
it's a totally different level of understanding yourself and understanding and communicating with others. It's just mind-blowing in some ways. It's sort of like a whole new level of understanding. And you think, I'm communicating clearly with you, but am I communicating at a level that you really understand, or am I being triggered by something that you're saying? and what's going on with me and why is it going on with me. And it boils down to sort of like, if this is said in such a manner, I think I'm going to die, because you have this deep, deep belief system within you. And the whole study group and the coaching program helps you peel back all of that to really, really understand yourself and communication. And it's helped me a huge amount with my son in communicating on a level that I'm not triggering him and he's not triggering me because of our different archetypes.
That's awesome. It's funny that you bring that up too, because so I have a 10-year-old son, and he recently got a watch phone, right? One of those Gab watches. I think it's T-Mobile version, so it's not Gab brand, but anyway, beside the point. So I texted him and said, "Hey man, just want to let you know that there are going to be a few changes next time you come over here, because what he likes to do is come here, turn on the TV, and be a little butthead. If I'm like, bro, it's time to turn the TV off, right? No more screen time, right? Well, so I said, hey, things are going to change a little bit. So, and I was, we just went through module 10, right? Module 9, the archetype module. And so and I didn't even realize what I was doing as I was doing it, but I was thinking, how can I do this? And I realized I was summoning my magician energy. And so he'd been begging me for these prime drinks. I don't know if you've heard of them, but it's something that Logan Paul, this YouTube sensation that's now a fighter, he created, I guess. And his friends have had them. He's the most delicious thing he's ever tasted. He's a kid that is very much motivated by food and by his taste buds. And so, I told him, hey, for every hour that we watch TV, right, there's going to be 30 minutes of either exercise, reading, or critical thinking dialogue between the two of us. And
lovely.
yeah. And I said, we don't have to do 30 minutes of one. We can do 10 minutes of each, or mix and match. And at first he was giving me these grumpy faces. No. And then I was keeping calm, and he kept coming back to no. And then I said, well, if you have a good attitude about this, what I'll do is I'll go and buy your prime drinks. And then when I got back he called me. He was like, so what flavor? Yeah. And immediately went from grumpy pants no to like completely open to it, because I was giving him what he wanted, as a reward for him giving me what I wanted. And so now we have this fair exchange of goods or services, right? And it, neither party feels like the other one's getting, taken advantage of.
But it's also understanding his sort of like archetype and where he's coming from, why he wants to be that wolf. He sounds a bit wolfish.
Yeah.
It's my way.
Yeah. Yeah. The warrior for sure.
Yeah. And well, if you go into Rory's course, you'll know that there's the balanced and the imbalanced side. And the balanced side is the warrior, and the imbalanced is the wolf.
Oh, okay. Because I heard people talk about the gorilla, the wolf, the sheep, and the fox.
Yeah, the sovereign is the balanced side. The gorilla is the unbalanced side. The magician is the balanced. The fox is the imbalanced, and the sheep and the lover. So, yeah. So I can be sovereign gorilla. So I'll sort of go into the do this, do that now, how, when I tell you, how I tell you, etc. When I'm in my gorilla mode.
That's funny. I am woman, hear me roar. Rawr, right. Yeah, that's great. And so how old are your kids?
34, 32, and 29.
And did they notice a difference in you when you went through the EMF program?
Well, 2 of them don't live here. One lives in London, one lives in Vancouver, and my son lives with me. But yes, he's sort of noticed difference. I've had it a little bit thrown back in my face. You got to laugh. I thought, yeah, the game of life is sort of like so cute in giving you examples to work with. You know, with an incident that had happened, and it's sort of like, well, you're the one doing all this personal development stuff, so you should know better.
Oh, you're right. So now I can see through all this BS and how you're trying to manipulate me. So good try.
Yeah.
Good try.
Yeah, but he's got to do that. You know, he
Yeah.
needs to come back to do that. You know, it wasn't intentional on his side, but the game of life is going to do that. You know, to see how I'm coping and how I'm going to work with it. And
Yeah, I love that. Well, and then the idea of a graduation event, right?
yeah,
The graduation event being that, hey, I feel I've graduated this issue. I feel that I've graduated this response, and the world's gonna be like, oh, really? Okay, well, here's an opportunity to prove it.
yeah, exactly. And you got to laugh at it.
Yeah,
You
you
know,
really do. You're the beauty of it. Like, hey, I'm ready. Okay,
yeah,
here we go. I was like, I wasn't
yeah.
ready. Or like, oh, man, holy cow, dude, I'm impressed. I really held my composure. Yeah.
Or, oh, I failed that one.
Right. Strike one. Yeah.
I really, really went back into my childhood tantrum stage,
Yeah.
but that's okay, because actually when you breathe and you can recognize, oh dear, I did revert back, you know, because we all do at some point. None of us, I don't think, we raise our levels, but when the pressure's on and we're feeling tired or we're this and that, we're going to have sometimes those bad hair days where everything goes to custard and you sort of go, "Urgh."
Well, and the real growth is the ability that when we relax our standards and we do, mess up and we don't live up to what we know that we can, the fact that we can recognize it and then realize, hey, that's not who I want to be, and then change our behavior and be aware of that so it doesn't happen again. That's where true growth happens.
Yes, exactly. And I think that also goes back to, again, in the EMF, it's where you visit or where you live. Are you going to live in that state, or are you just going to allow yourself to visit and then come back? Yeah. There's nothing wrong with visiting, because we all do it at times. And it's when we beat ourselves up for visiting that the problem happens, because then you start to go on a downward spiral.
Well, and what I found is that since life is about experience, right? The heart knows that, but the mind doesn't, right? The mind looks at a movie and is like, oh yeah, this all makes sense. This is all running seamlessly. The mind doesn't realize it's 24 still frames a second. So it's a picture and then another picture and another picture, like somebody, flipping a bunch of pages and having like an animation, go on.
Yeah.
Well, and so
Did
the
you
mind
used to do that as a child?
Oh yeah, totally, for sure. I totally used to do that. And so the mind will get so enamored with this picture and mistake it for the experience. So it forces the self to feel and relive that experience over and over and over because it can't get past the picture. But being able to recognize that, that darkness, that dark feeling that we have, right? The idea of, well, darkness is just the absence of light. There is no dark sun shining darkness on our world.
No.
So when you shine the light, well, then the darkness goes away because you were revealing the truth of the matter, and that which is not true, right, can no longer survive. It can no longer exist. And I find that really fascinating in the idea of just asking ourselves better questions. Hey, why do I feel this way? Where do I feel this?
Yes, where do I feel it? Yeah.
And then when I tune into why and where, what emotions are coming up? What thoughts are coming up? What memories are coming up? And in there, right? Scary, right? That's Beowulf going in to kill the monster, and lo and behold, he might end up procreating with that monster instead. And so, and we can certainly make it worse. And so that can be very scary. And that's the thought. Oh, if I go in there, I can make it worse. But Beowulf in the end redeemed himself. If you're familiar with the Beowulf story.
No, I haven't. But with your talking, though, I kept thinking about the cartoon, the psychology movie, Inside Out. Have you seen that?
Oh, yeah, I've seen Inside Out. Yeah, that's good. That's a good one.
Yeah. And where they're pushing sad to one side.
Yeah.
And then at the end, they realize that sad, has a place. Being sad has a place. And trying to deny it was causing all the problem.
Yep. The whole problem is saying, don't be sad. But I am
Mm.
sad. Don't be sad. Okay. Well, if I've never bench pressed before, and you're like, hey, here's 200 pounds, go for it. Like, what? Well, just do it.
Yeah.
Right. Just do it. Just quit being sad. Just
Yeah.
bench press. It's
Yeah.
nearly the same thing.
Mm. So, with you talking about that Bay, whatever,
Wolf. Yeah.
Bay Wolf, made me think of that.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's cool.
Have you read the book, The Life of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda?
Oh, the autobiography of a yogi?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
but I did. So when I graduated Ed's class, he sent me 2 mini books that were from Master Yogananda. I hear that Steve Jobs, something that you may have heard of, at his funeral, apparently he had it so everyone who showed up to his funeral would get a copy of that.
It's a great book. It's a
That's what I
thick
heard.
book. There's a lot of learning in it. Yeah, I read that back in 2008.
He speaks a lot of giving deference to God and knowing that God is what's true. I get the distinct impression that he's speaking of the God self and not like a wizard in the sky.
Yeah.
But does that sound accurate?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And sort of like you working on yourself. And that I don't know if the centers are still going, but he set up these schools for people to learn in India and America and other places. But I haven't followed that any further because I did a progressive counselling course down in Christchurch, and that's where they introduced me to Paramahansa Yogananda.
Yeah.
Back down there.
Yeah, I never heard that name until I met Ed.
Yeah.
Now I know that you're going to have a spiritual retreat in New Zealand coming up.
Yes.
Do you know Cindy Francis?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So
yeah, she was she was on the EMT and we flew together from New Zealand.
Oh, nice. Okay. Awesome. Because I know that she's in New Zealand. I've had her on the podcast and even have a lovely testimonial from a family member of hers that was a client of mine.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Magnificent. Oh, that's so good. And Cindy is so much into the spiritual world as well.
Well, her paintings. She's supposed to have I think what do you call that? So, a guy who runs an art gallery, I guess, is going to come and take a look at her art, and wanted some huge ones. And man, her art is pretty rad. It is. Yeah.
It's spectacular. It's sort of like she's just so guided with her art.
Well, and what I love about it, and I think that this is a great way to live life as well, is that when she paints, she says that she just puts her intention. So she summons the feeling of her intention and just paints, doesn't think about what she's painting. She's just allowing her intention to guide her. And what I love about that is that everything is spirit. Everything has a spirit. And so if you're putting the spirit of your intention of, this, unconditional love, well, that means that when Joshua comes and looks at it, he's going to get exactly what he needs, unconditional love. And then when he comes back and looks at it again, he's a different person. And he gets exactly what he needs. And then when he comes back and looks at it again, he's a different person yet again and gets exactly what he needs.
Yeah. It is the intention.
Yeah.
The intention behind every action, everything that we do, the intention is critical.
I agree with that.
Yeah. And is it the Chicken Soup for the Soul? They were books. And there was one story in it that really stuck in my mind. And it was about this grandmother always had like a little metal tin by her stove. And each time she cooked something, she would open this tin and look and put a pinch in. And everybody said her cooking was divine and beautiful. And then one of her grandchildren asked her one time, "What's in the tin? Because you always use it every time you bake or you cook." And she says, my love, is a pinch of love that I put in everything I bake and cook. So there's nothing actually in the tin, but intentionally I'm putting in a pinch of love.
And people can feel it.
Yeah.
And the belly brain, right? The brain, the neurons that are in the belly are picking that up. And like, ooh, buddy, give me more of that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Christene, if people want to reach out to you and, whether through training, whether through healing, joining an EMF cohort, what would be the best way for them to do that?
I have my website, which is my name, ChristeneLoweth.com. Or I've got an email, elite mentor Christene @gmail.com.
Perfect. And Christene, I'm assuming it's spelled the same way as
yes.
All right. Christene.
Christene.
Yeah.
It's got the E-N-E, not the I-N-E.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So ChristeneLoweth.com.
Okay. Awesome.
You can get hold of me. So
that sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, this has been an incredible conversation. I really appreciate the high vibrations that you bring. I've really enjoyed just the way that the conversation is kind of twisted and turned. Any final thoughts that you'd like to share?
If this is going out to anybody who has never done EMF, don't doubt. Take that leap of faith and trust that you're in the right place with the right people. And trust in yourself. And let go of goop. That one. Let go of goop. Yep. Good opinion of other people.
When we're no longer tied to that, we're no longer tied, but what will people think of me? Well, there's so much liberation. So much liberation.
Have you got 1 minute for a tiny story?
Yeah, go for it.
I went to Hobbiton with my nephew, which is Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And we were in this group, and the guide was showing us around and said, well, this is the section where Bilbo Baggins came running down the path and saying, I'm going on an adventure. And so he says, does anybody here want to do it? So I'm looking around. Yeah, I'm looking around and I'm just sort of gauging everybody, and I can see them all going, And I've got my nephew, 21-year-old nephew with me. And he's going, no, she's not. No. And I go, I'll do it. And so he said, cool. And so I ran down the path and went, I'm going on an adventure.
Dude, that's amazing. So first of all, if I would, so I want to go visit Hobbiton, but if I was ever in a position where somebody's like, yo, hey, who wants to go down here and yell like Bilbo or yell like Frodo? Like there would be Joshua, and then people would look and there would be like a dust silhouette of where Joshua was as I'm like racing to. So let me share real quick before we end this too. When I created my greatest ideal of goodness, of which I can conceive, that was Gandalf. That was totally Gandalf. And it wasn't just Gandalf, like, saying to the Balrog, you shall not pass, or fighting the Witch King. That was Gandalf hanging out with the hobbits. Why? Because they love to live life. Yeah. They're experiencing what's most important. Not, hey, how are we going to pay all these taxes? Hey, how are we going to get all these roads built? But like, hey, man, how are you doing? How are your crops coming? Hey, let's hang out. Let's share a little bit of friendly gossip, and let's, maybe eat a little bit too much and just enjoy each other's company. Sing some songs, have fun. And so I love that you brought that up because I have a big kinship for Lord of the Rings, and I really want to visit New Zealand.
Yeah, well, I did it, and then the rest of the group all looked around, and then as I was walking on, several people came up to me afterwards and says, I'm so pleased you did that. Thank you.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. So always the leader,
huh? Yeah, bit.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Okay.
Well, it's about being your truth, about being who you are. And people, we can't all be leaders, right? Eventually we can then maybe get to that point, but everyone can't be a leader at the same time. And when people see that, hey, they want to do it, they want to experience it, they want to see somebody else do it, but they're too, afraid to get out there and put and expose themselves to goop, like you said, and then you go out and do it. Well, they can now live vicariously through you. Do you remember that that lovely young lady, who ran out there and like, I'm going on an adventure, right? Yeah, that's awesome. I bet you brought a lot of smiles to a lot of people.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Anyway, it's been a delight. Really has.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this. You brought a smile to my face several times too, so I appreciate that. Well, Christene, I'll go ahead and add your website to the details of this video, as well as now you can you send me your Gmail just through Messenger, and I'll go ahead and add that as well. And so that way, if people want to reach out to you, they'll have the ability to right there. Okay.
Yeah, fantastic.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. This has been quite a blessing, and may love and truth always guide your path.
Thank you, and take care.
You take care as well.
Bye.